Okay, so for 42, take away 27, you have to borrow. Well, the most common error is when kids look at this and they say 7 take away 2 is 5. And they'll put a 5 there and they're sure they have it right, but they don't. So to prevent that mistake, I always have kids write something up here in the corner with an arrow. I always have them write an arrow pointing to that top right number, and they have to write the word have. It accomplishes two things in one thing. They learn how to spell have because they're writing have a lot. And also, it reminds them to say to themselves, you have 2 apples. Can you take away 7 apples? No, you can't. So what do? Borrow. Now, another thing that helps them to know what to do is to have a sing-songy sort of chant. And the chant is this. So you can't take 7 away from 2, so you borrow from the 4, makes it a 3. So, and that's sing-songy, so that, and I'm going to do the chant again. You can't take 7 away from 2, so you, and the kid says, you say it.
Borrow
From the 4, makes it a 3. Put the one you borrowed where? You point up and say, right next door. You put it right next door. You don't mark out the 2 and write 12 above it. And there's a reason for that, which I will explain later. But you have them just put the one you borrowed where? Right next door. And again, a sing-songy thing. Right next door. So let's go through the chant thing. So you can't take 7 away from 2, so you borrow from the 4, makes it a 3. Put the one you borrowed where? Right next door. And then you can do 12, take away 7 is 5. And 3, take away 2 is 1, and you get the right answer. So the purpose of the sing-songy chant thing is this. If they're at school and they have to say, I have to borrow, then they can hear that song in their head, have to borrow from the 4, makes it a 3. They know what to do. Put the one you borrowed where? And they hear it in their head, right next door. Sounds stupid, but it works. So now I'm going to explain why you don't do this. Because a lot of people do teach it this way because they learned it this way. You can't take 7 away from 2, so you borrow from the 7, makes it a 3. And then they do this. So that makes that a 12. You don't do that because when you're borrowing, look, when I borrowed and marked that 4 out, I made it 1 lower. And most of the time when you mark out a number and you're borrowing, you make it 1 lower. So they get that in their head, mark it out, make it 1 lower, mark it out, make it 1 lower, mark it out, make it 1 lower. So when they do this, they make the mistake of marking it out and putting an 11. I've seen it 1,000 times, literally 1,000 times, because I've been teaching for 30 years, so I've seen that 1,000 times where they'll mark that out and they'll put an 11. Because they've got that in their head, you mark it out, you make it 1 lower, mark it out, make it 1 lower. So you don't. When you borrow from the 4, makes it a 3, you just put the one you borrowed where? Right next door. Put it right next door. And you can see it's a 12. It's much better and it prevents mistakes. Okay, cut that one.